Hi, I'm GM Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. Welcome to this video about a game AlphaZero and Stockfish. We are looking at the Advance Caro-Kann with AlphaZero as white and Stockfish as black. In a previous video, we've looked at some very interesting ideas for white with an early c3 when white takes on c5. And this video we are looking at a main line where white plays for knight f3. In this game we are going to see some very typical AlphaZero attacking ideas on the queen side, and some also typical Stockfish play, lots of play on the queen side, and so a very interesting struggle arises. AlphaZero does attacking maneuvers like pushing the h-pawn, bishops lining up against the king and redeploying the knights. Stockfish manages to get an advanced pawn all the way to b2, and the threats of this queening ensure that Stockfish always has a lot of counterplay. Okay, let's have a look at the game.
Yeah, it's a very exciting game, and it's one of the games we analysed this a very long time ago, actually. But it's one of those games that didn't make it into the book. But when you look at it, you think, wow, well, we could have written a book that was maybe another 500 pages long with all the great stuff we've got. So let's just look through the opening moves. I'll just go back here. So it's e4 c6, d4 d5, e5. AlphaZero's real favourite against the Caro-Kann. C5, the Khenkin-Arkell system, played by the Israeli Grandmaster Igor Khenkin and the British Grandmaster Keith-Arkell. They've played hundreds of games in this that variation. I think each of them actually loads and loads of games. And yeah, as Natasha mentioned, we looked at d takes c5, e6, c3 from AlphaZero in a couple of videos, and this was a very interesting idea, quite unusual, hasn't been played very much. But AlphaZero has also played quite a few games with this line, knight f3, which is one of the main lines. Now, Stockfish always preferred the move c takes d4 in reply. There's a couple of other moves. Bishop g4 is possible, knight c6 is probably the main line, but c takes d4 is also quite common. It's very interesting because it leads to a structure after knight takes d4, knight c6, takes, that you get from an awful lot of positions from French defences and also from Sicilian Khans. So actually it's quite interesting to see how how AlphaZero handles this line. So we get bishop d3, queen c7, little move just to force white to play queen e2, e6, knight d2, c5, b3, just to hold back the c-pawn. I think in some other games AlphaZero played c3 immediately, but it generally tends to transpose into each other. Knight e7, knight f3, a5. Stockfish getting its counterplay on the queen side going. Castles kingside, knight c6. It's a nice thing for black with that exchange of the queen's knight. This king's knight, it doesn't have the square f6 available, of course, because of the pawn on e5, but it does have this replacement square c6 available, which is quite good. The knight's quite active and gets out of the way, allowing the bishop on f8 to develop. c3, bishop e7, rook d1, a4 from Stockfish. Takes the opportunity now that white's wasted a tempo, you could say, with rook d1, just to swap off the rooks on the queen side, reduce white's attacking forces, and now castles. So yeah, I mean, I like this game simply because I like these types of positions. They're it's something where you could say, it's very typical. I think both sides have played very logically, right from the opening. Black's managed to get a bit of queenside counterplay going and get his king to safety. White's just developed quite normally, and now both sides have to find a plan in this position. It's going to be a lovely clash of plans, actually. Pardon me.
Interesting. It looks like white has good control of the a file, but you see in coming moves that white actually wants to keep the pieces on. And decides in the end to relinquish the a file just in order to make sure that the rooks stay on the board.
Yeah, it's I mean, essentially AlphaZero is putting everything here on a kingside attack. And, well, the way that it does it, well, you just see it all over Game Changer, actually. So quite interesting. So it starts with h4, always the way to start a kingside attack for AlphaZero. Use the rook's pawn to, yeah, I mean, threaten to open up the kingside, and you know, if the h pawn moves to h6, then the kingside dark squares are weakened. If black stops it earlier, for example, with a move like h5, then this always gives a move like g4, you know, to attack the kingside. Very typical. We've seen it loads of times. This move is very nice as well. Rook c1. White's simply anticipating that black's going to play rook a8, and white does not want to exchange off rooks. Wants to keep the rook for possible attacking possibilities. So happy to give up the open file just to keep play for later. And again, we've seen this many times in Game Changer in all sorts of different positions. Rook a8, h5, rook a3, and now bishop b1. So it's actually a little twist from AlphaZero. It does this rook's pawn attack in a slightly different way. This move, bishop b1, stops rook b3 because of the move queen c2, forking b3 and h7. And actually, this was, you know, another idea of playing rook c1, that the bishop on b1 could hide behind it. And white's idea, in actual fact, is to play queen c2, force black to play g7 to g6, and then AlphaZero is going to use another way of exploiting the dark squares that we haven't seen too often. So queen d8, good move from Stockfish, always plays these good defensive queen moves. This queen is stopping something coming into g5, and the queen might also be looking to go to a8 in order to well, support the black's queenside initiative. Rook d1, just putting opposite the queen. It's a nice little general good positional move, anticipating a future d5, d4 from black, and also putting the rook opposite the queen, which you know, never harms. g6, queen b2. Yeah, I mean, Stockfish actually just doesn't wait for queen c2, just plays g6 straight away. Also just to threaten rook takes b3. So queen b2 from AlphaZero, just attacking the rook and, well, sort of putting the question, is black going to move its queen away from the king side straight away, or is it going to move the rook back? Well, Stockfish decides to move the rook back for now, keep the queen for defense. And now AlphaZero plays this unusual idea, but very nice idea, knight h2. The knight's coming round to g4 and eyeing the f6 and h6 squares. And, well, one of the ideas is to go knight g4 to h6 takes f7, and then h takes g6 after, once you get the queen and the bishop lining up on that b1 h7 diagonal.
And carnage will ensue.
And carnage will ensue, indeed. So, well, it's time for Stockfish to react, really, to start doing something. If AlphaZero gets a few more moves, this could prove very, very nasty. And, well, Stockfish doesn't miss the critical moment here and plays d4. So opening up the line of the bishop, the a8, h1 diagonal, and also starting to introduce ideas like d takes c3 followed by knight d4. And just in general, you know, getting some tension on the queen side when that's the area that, you know, that black wants to attack. That's always a good idea. So knight g4 from AlphaZero. And now Stockfish plays a good move here, queen a8. Yeah, I mean, black's task here is to try and prosecute its queenside attack without, you know, getting too many defensive pieces away from the king side. And well, queen a8, queen a5, they're both aiming to, you know, invade through the a file. Queen a8 just keeps the queen a little bit close to the king by covering the back rank, and I can demonstrate that by one variation. So if black played queen a5 instead of queen a8, one of the ideas that white could think of would be to play knight h6 check, takes, and queen c2, threatening queen takes g6. Now, if this queen was on a8, black could play queen g8 and defend this, whereas now queen c2, bishop on b1, there's no way to to prevent queen takes g6. It's probably all right for black. Black can run with king e8, but it just shows that the queen on a8 is just a little bit of a better defensive piece than the queen on a5. So AlphaZero continued with this move, queen c1, just aiming for bishop g5. Getting rid of the dark squared bishops and then invading with a queen on h6. I mean, really, if bishop g5 happens, then black's in big trouble here. So black played rook a1 with some counterplay here, because if you go bishop g5, then black plays rook takes b1 in order to distract the queen from the defense of the bishop. There's still some interesting lines, actually. I think, what was I looking at? Knight h6 check. And black plays the move king f8, bishop e7, knight takes e7, queen b1, bishop takes g2. And this is another big point of queen a8. You can really see what a great defensive attacking move this was. The queen, keeping on touch through the back rank, but also supporting an a-file invasion and this a8 h1 diagonal invasion. And this is quite dangerous. Black's threatening both bishop h1 and also bishop h3. It's
you could say it's a sort of centralizing move, like a paradoxically centralizing move, putting that queen on a8.
Exactly.
The middle of the king side and the queen side.
Yeah, no, it's sort of
no, it's right in the corner.
Yeah, it's like it's at the apex, just communicating with all the key areas in black's position. But that's black's that's what black is aiming for there. So AlphaZero plays another very typical move. We see it so often. Just at the height of the attack, it plays a king move, just putting it just to a slightly safer place. And here it's getting out of back rank checks. That's the basic idea. And now it's the onus is on black to find a follow-up. Black was ready to deal with any immediate white threats, but does black have a way of keeping on further? I mean, for example, one idea for white now is that that really gains a tempo in the attack is that if ever rook takes d1 happens at some stage, it's no longer happening with check. That's why the king is better on h2. So Stockfish played queen a3, which was a very good move, threatening to exchange of queens, queen c2, and now Stockfish played another very good move. I was looking at a few different things here, actually. I was looking at knight a5, which felt quite good, opening up the line of the bishop and the queen threatening to take on b3. There's various lines, but one little trick that I want to show you, not necessarily best play, but still, is this move knight takes f7. So if king takes f7, we go h takes g6 check. But it looks as if black could just play rook takes b1 here. Rook b1, king f7, and then two pieces for the rook. Kingside is safe. But we've got a very nice sneaky idea, which is to play bishop c1, attacking the queen on a3 and actually trapping it.
Where's that queen going to go next?
Nowhere. Queen is trapped. So that's a very nice idea. Just always amazing how you're attacking on the king side, you force something on the queen side, and then you come back and trap the queen. So that move knight a5 is a bit too risky. D takes c3 was another move I was looking at. That felt reasonably logical. But queen c3, knight d4. I mean, you see another good point of the king being on h2. There's no fork on e2 with the knight. And here white probably plays the move knight f6, takes and takes. And this is, again, very difficult for black. This pawn restricts the king to the back rank. This knight can't move. White can also think of playing queen g3 and then taking the pawn on g6. There's a lot of attacking possibilities here for white. Stockfish's move was much, much better. It played this move c4, which has all the advantages of knight a5, but without trapping the queen. The idea is simply, of course, something like b takes c4. I go queen c3, and black's broken through. So now we're really at the we're really getting into some serious counterplay here. So queen e4 was what AlphaZero did. C takes b3, c takes d4. And well, what has white gained with this maneuver? Well, white's gained an extra lever against the to weaken up the kingside, open up the d file. It's gained d4 to d5, and there's still all the threats like knight h6 takes f7 in the position. So is Stockfish going to play some quiet defensive move? Not at all. b2, in we go. Well, maximising its b pawn and also reactivating the queen along the third rank, which can prove useful. So yeah, I spent quite a lot of time looking at the move d5, and the idea is, for example, if you play knight b4, then I go d6, and bishop takes e4, d takes e, and you can't stop me playing rook d8 check, which is going to be well, it's going to be mate. For example. Well, actually, e8 queen might might prove even more dangerous than that. Oh yeah, that was for example, if he went bishop c6, then I've got rook d8 check, king g7, and I've got a choice of mates, either bishop h6 or maybe probably for AlphaZero the most thematic is h6 mate, using that rook's pawn. Black's best line, in actual fact, is to play knight d8. Defends the bishop on b7, covers e6 f7, and what was I looking at? Knight f6 check takes. Oh yeah, this crazy variation takes bishop d5, and then queen c2. Note that rook takes d5 takes, queen e8 check is met by queen f8. So typical for Stockfish. It uses its queen, to attack the opponent, but always keeps it somehow that it can retreat back to the kingside at a moment's notice. Always so skillful with its queen defences. So queen c2 is pretty dangerous, actually, threatening queen c7, for example. Queen b4. This was then the engine line that we worked out together. Knight c6, amazing move. Just. But again, the idea is if queen c8 check, we've got this move queen f8 defending everything, and the queen is slightly restricted here. It can't move too far away because the bishop on f4 is hanging. And I think that was the idea, wasn't it? That if bishop d6, we can go queen h4 check and queen f6 and destroy the pawn and give the king some space to escape if necessary. So all sorts of crazy ideas, but White did have an idea. This was I think when I was analysing, I sort of went bishop g6. That was as far as I went, and I said, and I'm sure this is going to work. But of course, it doesn't quite work. Bishop g6, a great move. Again, you see the value of king h2. No rook takes d1 check, and if fg, then we go queen g7 mate. However, Black's got this defence queen f8. And you notice how useful as a counterplay option this pawn on b2 and rook on a1 is, because, yeah, I mean, White's got to think of, well, I've got to be quick because otherwise this pawn's going to queen. So bishop b1 was what the engine wanted. I mean, we're looking at rook d3 to g3. That could be a very big threat. But now this great move, bishop e4. What a move. It stops the rook getting to d3, and it also attacks the bishop on b1. And after bishop e4, we've got rook takes d1. But crazily enough, we're still going. This still carries on, this line. Just incredible tactics. Queen takes c6. And it turns out now that if Black goes b1 queen, then bishop b1, rook b1, queen c3 is extremely hard for Black to deal with. I mean, White's got at least perpetual with queen g3, h3, and possibly more. I thought that queen g3 check, queen h3 check, king g8 now. If you go king g6, then queen d3 check, rook f5, g4 picks up the rook. And if you go king h7, then I think that bishop h6 was, I think this was working actually. Was it queen d6 and now either g3 or f4, I think. And depending on what Black plays, you'll have queen g4 check or bishop g7 followed by queen h8. I think that was the idea.
So this is another position where we've got an attacking queen and bishop against a queen and rook. We had that in a Stockfish video from TSAC the other day.
That's right, Stockfish against Sadie Stein, that's right, yeah.
Yes, where the rook couldn't quite get itself into a good enough position to defend against this very active bishop.
Yeah.
And in some of these lines, it's a similar theme.
No, that's true, absolutely. It's there is in actual fact a path to a draw in this line. So rook d4 was the idea, queen c2, and then Stockfish was taking and coming here. And the great idea is that if you then run after the pawn with queen b1, I've got this move queen f5, attacking the queen on b1. If the queen just moved away, then I would queen my pawn, of course, and queen b2 check, and queen f3. And the engines thought that this would be a draw, and well, that probably is true. The queen's very active, and black will play king h7 to g6 to pick up the pawn on f6. So yeah, I mean, crazy variations, crazy variations, and I got some of the way as far as this, but I need the engines to do the rest. This was really complicated. But d5 was a pretty dangerous move. It was a move. AlphaZero preferred another one, preferred knight f6 check straight away, just keeping its powder dry and looking for d5 now, in actual fact. And now, again, a thing that Stockfish always does so well with defence. It uses its queen to keep on harrying white, and just at the last moment, every time it manages to stop white from achieving what it wants. So queen b3, attacking that rook on d1. Rook d3 from AlphaZero, and then queen b4. So the queen is pinning the d pawn to the queen, so d5 isn't possible. And then the rook is also threatening to take on b1, since the rook's been dragged to d3. So there was a little bit of a repetition. They always like to do this, the engines. And then AlphaZero carries on. Of course, AlphaZero and Stockfish always carry on the game if there's any chance at all. So the rook looks very dangerous, teeing up on the g6 square. The only problem is that the queen on d6 is pinning it now still. So amazing how that queen is so useful, and pinning it on g3. So can't quite sacrifice on g6 yet. And now knight a5. So Stockfish trying to distract the queen away from the defense of the bishop on b1, so it can just play rook b1. Queen c2. And now knight c4 from Stockfish, actually teeing up an amazing defensive idea here. Bishop h6 from AlphaZero, and I mean, this looks pretty serious, really. I mean, you know, white's got all the pieces in the right place, and just needs just a little bit of a break, and it's going to be curtains for black. But here, Stockfish comes up with an incredible series of tactics. So rook takes b1, queen takes b1. And then queen d5, and this looks, you know, for all the world like a total blunder. The queen is threatening to come to h5, but I've got this move h takes g6, and if h takes g6, then I'll go rook takes g6 and deliver mate. However, Stockfish's idea was to play queen e4, so blocking the queen's access to the b1 h7 diagonal. If you take on any of these, well, the king just gets free. No problem at all. One sweet point actually is that if takes, and rook here, I can actually go king h6 check, because the pawn on b2 is stopping queen c1, which I thought was very nice. So, and of course the queen is, if you take the queen, then just bishop takes, and then b1 queen is unstoppable. So, for example, and it's quite a crucial idea that, because if rook b3, b1 queen, then that's what's stopping you from delivering mate on b8. So very nice, and it gets even crazier. So queen d1. So, well, why can't black play b1 queen? And that's a very good question, and it is not at all obvious. I really needed the engines to explain to me what precisely the tactic was. It's g takes f7, king f7 forced, rook g7 check, and now king takes f6, and queen h5. And all sorts of threats of mate here now. Queen h4, g5 check, queen f7, rook f7. So, you know, an awful lot of mating threats there. So black's best line is to play queen takes g2, takes and takes. And at first sight, this doesn't look too bad. I mean, black's still got his spare queen on b1. And how is white actually doing this? But this move, bishop g5 check, is incredible and wins on the spot. So if king f5, then I've got queen h7 check, picking up the queen on b1. And if you go king h6, then queen h6, bizarrely enough, is going to be force mate. King f7 is the main idea. King g8 will have oh, good lord, sorry. King h8 loses to queen f8. And king g8, we start with queen takes c6 check. It'll lead to something pretty similar to what I'm going to show you. So king f7, queen f6 check, king g8, queen e8 is queen e7 mate, king g8, and then bishop h6, and black amazingly cannot stop mate. Is that correct? That's not correct, Matthew. No, that's not correct, because we've got queen h1, king g3, queen h3, king f4, and queen f5 check at least, or even queen f3. That's not correct, Matthew. No, there's a different line there. No, I think we're going queen e6 check. That's what we're doing. And king f8, then I've got bishop h6 checkmate. That's what we're doing. God, I mean, it's so terribly precise, all of this. You know, it's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Amazing how these engines can calculate. Of course, I didn't, you know, I didn't see any of this. I was just staring at it and wondering, you know, how on earth is white going to mate after that? So h takes g6 was the move, and now bishop g7 with more nice stuff, because if black goes b1 queen here, then we play queen b1, and rook h3 and rook h8 mate is unstoppable. But we've got another great idea here, this move g5. And the idea is that after queen h5, so it's not queen h7, it's queen h4 check here. And after rook h3, which looks pretty good, I mean, queen h5, we'd have rook h5 followed by mate. Black has this idea of queen f4 check, and this is actually perpetual check, because I can't go g3 because of queen takes f2. I can't go king g1 because b1 queen will do the business. So white has to go rook g3, and then you go queen h4 check, rook h3, queen f4 with a perpetual check draw. It's amazing, simply. I mean, I just I thought that was incredible. I mean, I love the just the way that both sides went about, you know, developing their initiative from this very typical position. You know, and I thought both did extraordinarily well. You know, AlphaZero's attacks on the kingside were incredible, but Stockfish's defenses were amazing. And yeah, I mean, these some of these tactics, you know, in these final positions here with the queen, you know, threatening to queen, and still, you know, AlphaZero finding new attacking possibilities, Stockfish finding, you know, perpetuals, you know, really amazing.
I wouldn't like to work it all out in time trouble.
No, I wouldn't like to work it out really with 3 or 4 hours on my clock, to be honest. That would be pretty tough all the way. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that game. Just a little bit of a change from our recent T-set games. Just good to see, you know, AlphaZero, the engine that started, you know, so much of what's new and great in computer chess. If you haven't got our book Game Changer,
now's the time. It's a fantastic read and lots of really good games like this in it.
Exactly. And just think, you know, if this game didn't make it to Game Changer, then think how amazing all the other games are. And otherwise, if you haven't subscribed to our channel,
please subscribe.
Please subscribe, and otherwise keep well, keep safe, and keep on watching our channel. We've got lots more to do, lots more T-set games to follow. Thanks very much for watching.
Thank you for watching.